Highland Springs, Montana, 5 bikers swaggered into Ruby's diner, clearly looking for trouble. But instead of chaos, they found Lauren Crawford. On the surface, she was just a quiet waitress. Nothing about her screamed danger. But what they didn't see was her Delta Force background. They didn't see the scars of 3 combat tours, and they definitely didn't see what was about to happen. What unfolded next would be watched over 50 million times online. A viral moment showing one woman dismantling a gang of feared bikers in seconds. But the footage didn't show everything. This isn't just a story about a waitress who took down 5 men in 30 seconds. This is the beginning of something much bigger, a movement, a shift, a story of how enemies became allies, and how one woman's courage sparked change far beyond the walls of that little diner. Before we dive into what really happened, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow we've got something even more powerful coming your way. As the evening sun stretched long shadows across the scuffed linoleum of Ruby's diner, Lauren moved from table to table with quiet precision. Her steps were silent, her uniform crisp, her dark hair tied neatly in a bun. To most, she was just another hard-working waitress in a sleepy Montana town. But Ruby, the owner, had learned to see past that. 2 years of working together taught her to notice the details, how Lauren's eyes constantly swept the room, how she always chose spots with clear views of all exits, and the way her shoulders tensed slightly when strangers walked through the door. "More coffee, Mr. Parker?" Her voice was soft but steady, already pouring before the elderly veteran could nod. She knew all her regulars, their habits, their routines, even their stories. Mr. Parker came every Thursday at 5:30, ordered a club sandwich, and liked his coffee topped off exactly twice. "You're a blessing, Wren," he smiled, his weathered hands wrapped around the warm mug. In the far corner, a young mother sat with 2 little kids, crayons scattered across the table as she scrolled her phone. Lauren noticed how the woman had placed her keys near the edge of the table, ready for a quick grab if something went wrong. Most people wouldn't catch a detail like that, but Lauren wasn't most people. Then the bell over the door rang, and everything changed. Heavy boots echoed across the floor as 5 members of the Savage Riders motorcycle gang filed in. Leather jackets, intimidating patches, and eyes that scanned the room like predators. Their leader, known only as Storm, was 6'2" and walked with the kind of arrogance that comes from knowing people are afraid of you. Behind the counter, Ruby instinctively reached for the phone. Lauren gave a slight shake of her head. Not yet. "Well, what do we have here?" Storm's voice boomed. "Looks like we found ourselves a nice quiet place for dinner, boys." Tension rippled through the room. Mr. Parker's hand trembled slightly. The young mother began quietly gathering her children's crayons. "Aw, don't leave because of us," one of the bikers called out, grinning toward the mother. "We're just here for a friendly chat." Lauren kept wiping down a nearby table, her motions calm, but her eyes tracked every movement, using the reflection in a chrome napkin holder. Storm was front and center, his second in command near the door, the rest spread out. Classic intimidation formation. "Hey, Silent Sally," Storm barked. "We need some service over here." Lauren turned, order pad in hand, her face blank, her tone neutral. But every muscle was alert, every instinct sharpened. "What can I get you?" she asked, voice calm and controlled. Storm leaned forward, invading her space. "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue? Maybe we need to help you find your voice." The mother in the corner booth stood, trying to usher her kids out. One biker stepped in their path. "Please move aside," Lauren said, voice suddenly different, firm, commanding, heads turned. It didn't sound like a waitress anymore. Storm narrowed his eyes. "Or what?" "You gonna make us?" She calmly set down her order pad. "These people are trying to leave. I suggest you let them—" "You suggest?" Storm laughed, but something in her posture made him pause. It was subtle, but it rattled him. "You don't know who we are, do you?" he growled. Lauren's eyes didn't waver. "Oh, I know exactly who you are. The real question is, do you know who I am?" The diner went completely silent. Storm reached for her arm. His fingers barely grazed her wrist, and then everything changed. Storm's hand swiped through empty air. Wren hadn't even flinched. Her face stayed calm, almost serene, but her entire posture had shifted. The waitress was gone. In her place stood something far more formidable. "That was your first mistake," she said, voice low and steady. "Let's not make a second." Storm's second in command, a wiry man with a snake tattoo curling up his neck, took a step forward. "Boss," he muttered uneasily, "there's something off about her, the way she moves." Behind them, the mother and her kids had made it to the door, safe thanks to Wren's subtle positioning. Mr. Parker didn't move a muscle, but his eyes followed every detail. He'd seen this kind of control before, not in diners, but on the battlefield. Ruby stood frozen behind the counter, her hand on the phone, but she hadn't dialed. Not yet. She recognized that look in Wren's eyes. She'd seen it once before, and never forgot. "No one makes a fool out of me in my own town," Storm growled, throwing a punch heavy enough to drop most men. But Wren wasn't most people. She slipped past it like it was slow motion, using his own force to spin him off balance. He crashed into a table, silverware scattering like shrapnel. "Your town?" she replied, voice cool and even. "This diner belongs to Ruby. And these people, they're under my protection." Two more bikers flanked her. Wren adjusted her stance just slightly, enough to keep them all in her line of sight. Her breathing was calm, her hands loose, but every fiber of her body was ready. This wasn't adrenaline. This was training. Years of it. About to be used not in a war zone, but in a small-town diner. Storm snarled, trying to regain control. "Who the hell are you?" "You've had 3 chances to walk away," she said, eyes locked. "You won't get a 4th. The snake-tattooed biker lunged, hand diving for a hidden blade, but Wren moved like a shadow, one clean, precise maneuver, and he was on his knees, gasping, the knife clattering harmlessly to the floor. "That's 2, she said, calm as ever. Storm stared at his man, taken down by a waitress without breaking a sweat. Something in his face cracked. That cold mask of dominance started to falter. Then came the voice that confirmed it all. "Delta Force," Mr. Parker said softly, a note of awe in his voice. "You're Delta, aren't you? The way you move, no doubt about it." The room froze. Storm looked from Parker to Wren, suddenly realizing this wasn't what he thought. 3 tours, she confirmed. "Now I serve coffee instead of commands, but some instincts don't fade, like standing up for those who can't." The remaining bikers looked to Storm, but their swagger had vanished. Their usual script, fear, control, dominance, had been flipped. "You think being some soldier makes you better than us?" Storm tried to growl, but the bite was gone. "No," Wren said simply. "But choosing to protect instead of threaten, that makes a person better. And it's a choice, one you can still make." Ruby stepped forward at last, setting the phone down. "I hired her 2 years ago," she said, voice proud and clear. "Best decision I ever made. Not because she can handle trouble, but because she always tries to stop it before it starts." Blue and red lights pulsed through the windows. Someone had called the cops. But everyone knew the next few moments mattered more than anything the police could write up. Wren looked at Storm. "Your crew's watching," she said softly. "Right now you get to choose what kind of leader you really are. The guy who got dropped by a waitress, or the man who knew when to change direction." Storm glanced at his men, then at the flashing lights outside. A security camera blinked silently in the corner, recording every second. "Stand down," he finally said. His second looked confused. "But I said stand down." This time the command carried not just authority, but something else. Something unfamiliar, maybe reflection. The savage riders filed out slowly, the illusion of power replaced by something raw and human. Storm stopped at the door, his back to the diner. "This ain't over," he muttered, but his voice wasn't laced with threat. It held something else. "You're right," Wren replied. "It's just beginning." As the police moved in and statements were taken, Ruby brewed a fresh pot of coffee like it was just another night, but it wasn't. Everyone in that diner knew they'd just witnessed something rare. Not just a takedown, but the kind of moment that sparks transformation. Wren? She was already wiping down tables again, calm and composed, just a waitress once more. Mr. Parker watched her with quiet amazement. All this time we thought we were just getting good service, he murmured. Never knew we had a guardian angel in an apron. Not an angel, Wren said softly. Just someone who found a new way to serve. Outside, Storm sat on his motorcycle, staring at his reflection in the diner window. His hand drifted toward the brass knuckles in his pocket, then stopped. Something had shifted. He didn't know what it was yet, but it had started tonight. And inside Ruby's diner, as the last of the coffee cups clinked and the world returned to normal, a quiet promise lingered in the air, one brewed strong with hope, change, and something worth believing in. Lauren Crawford arrived at the Veterans Support Center hours before her afternoon shift at Ruby's. She unlocked the door of the converted warehouse, her second home, and stepped into the stillness. The security footage from the diner had already started making rounds online. Everyone was talking. Everyone except her. Wren hadn't watched it. She didn't need to. The building was quiet, just how she liked it in the morning. Framed photos of service members lined the walls. Flyers for job training, group therapy, and resource programs were neatly arranged on the bulletin board. Here, she didn't have to pretend. Here, she wasn't just a waitress. She was something more. Right on cue, Claire Winston pulled into the parking lot, 2 coffees in hand and concern written all over her face. "You're early," Claire said, stepping out, "and I saw the video. Half the town has. You all right?" "I'm fine," Wren said, reviewing the day's intake forms. "But we might want to prepare for a little more attention than usual." Before Claire could answer, the low rumble of a motorcycle broke the calm. But this one didn't sound like last night's gang. This wasn't the roar of intimidation. It was hesitant, awkward, like the rider didn't quite know if he should even be here. Through the window, Wren spotted him, Jack Murphy, one of the younger savage riders. His name had shown up on a few police reports. "We're not open yet," Claire called out, but Wren raised her hand. "Let him in." Jack stepped inside slowly. The gang patch on his leather cut marked him as one of Storm's men, but the way he carried himself was different. Shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. He hadn't slept. "Captain," he said quietly, using her old rank, "I need to talk." "Not a captain anymore," Wren replied. "Just Wren is fine." Jack hesitated, looked at Claire, then back to Wren. "Storm's different today. I've never seen him like this. He's got a daughter, Amy. She's 12. She saw the video, called him this morning. She was crying, asked him why he was being a bully." Sunlight poured through the windows, catching floating dust in the still air. Wren didn't speak. She let Jack fill the silence. "Thing is," he continued, voice cracking slightly, "most of us, we're not who people think we are. Even Storm. We just got lost somewhere along the way?" Claire moved to respond, but Wren gave a slight shake of her head. This moment wasn't about speaking. It was about listening. "I did 2 tours in Afghanistan," Jack said suddenly. "Infantry. Came home and couldn't fit in anywhere. The riders, they felt like the only thing close to a unit. Brotherhood. But last night, when I saw you," he stopped. "When you saw me—" "What?" Wren asked gently. "You had the skills. You had the power. But you didn't humiliate anyone. You protected people, like my old sergeant used to." His hands fidgeted nervously with the zipper on his vest. It made me remember who I was before all this. Outside, the sound of more motorcycles pulled Jack's head around fast. Instinctive tension, but it wasn't the gang. Just 3 older vets on their usual morning coffee run. "See them?" Wren nodded toward the window. "They found their brotherhood too, but they built it around healing, not fear." The vets clocked Jack's patch and stiffened, clearly wary, but Jack didn't even notice them. He was staring at a photo on the wall. One of U.S. soldiers building a school in Afghanistan. His eyes lingered there. Storm's outside the diner, Jack said finally. Been there since dawn. Amy's inside having breakfast with Ruby. He's just sitting in his truck, staring, like he's trying to figure something out. Claire looked at Wren, unsure where this was all going. You know what the hardest part of combat is? Wren asked, walking over to the coffee machine. It's not the fighting. It's knowing when to stop, knowing how to come home. She poured 3 cups. Take one to Storm. Tell him I'm here until noon. If he wants to talk, tell him to bring Amy. Jack took the coffees with the kind of care you'd reserve for something fragile. And if he says no? He asked. Then we try again tomorrow, Wren replied. Change doesn't happen overnight. But it does happen. After Jack left, Claire turned to her. You really think this is a good idea? They're still savage riders. Wren watched his bike fade into the distance. No, she said quietly. They're veterans who forgot who they were. Maybe it's time someone reminded them. The center flowed through its usual morning rhythm. Support groups, job sessions, quiet conversations over burned coffee. But today, there was an energy in the air. Word had spread. Some came out of curiosity. Others came looking for something they couldn't explain. At 11:45, a truck pulled into the lot. Storm stepped out, still wearing his leather vest, but something about him looked smaller, weathered, unsure. Beside him was Amy, clutching a notebook covered in butterfly stickers. Your coffee's getting cold, Wren called from the doorway. Storm glanced at his daughter, then back at Wren. She's got questions, he said slowly, about what it means to be strong, the right way. Wren stepped aside and held the door open wider. Then let's talk, she said, about strength, the real kind. As Storm and Amy walked inside, sunlight struck the patch on his jacket, the snarling wolf in mid-howl. For the first time, he looked down at it, really looked, and something in his eyes said he wasn't sure if it still represented who he wanted to be. The meeting room at the Veterans Support Center felt different today. Storm and his daughter Amy sat at the old conference table, sunlight filtering through the windows, catching the edges of her open notebook, a page filled with careful pencil sketches of motorcycles with wings. Storm shifted in his seat, the creak of his leather cut loud in the quiet room. He didn't look like the man who had once dominated a diner. He looked like a father, unsure, guarded, sitting in a chair meant for group therapy, not intimidation. My mom left 2 years ago, Amy said softly, responding to one of Wren's gentle questions. She said Dad was never going to change. She hesitated, glancing at him. But I remember how he used to be, before the savage riders. Storm clenched his jaw but didn't interrupt. For the first time, he was really listening. He used to teach motorcycle safety at the community college, Amy continued, her voice tinged with pride. People said he was the best instructor they'd ever had. Wren leaned in, her tone easy, encouraging. Tell me about those classes. Storm's posture shifted, just slightly, as if the memory softened something hardened in him. He was great at it, Amy answered, beaming. But then the college shut down the program, and I got bitter, Storm cut in. Started riding with guys who made me feel powerful instead of useful. The door creaked open, and Claire stepped in with more coffee. Behind her, Jack Murphy stood in the hallway, flanked by 3 other savage riders. Their stance was hesitant, unsure. They've been waiting out there for over an hour, Wren said to Storm. Might as well let them hear this too. The bikers filtered in quietly, taking seats around the table. Amy kept drawing as they settled. Her motorcycles now had flames beneath the wings. Most of us served, Jack said, breaking the silence. Storm was Army, I was too. Mike's a Marine, Josh, Air Force. We came back home and didn't know how to fit in. The Savage Riders gave us something, structure, brotherhood, a reason to get up in the morning. Even if it was the wrong reason, Storm added. We didn't care. Wren walked to the wall, pointing to a faded photo, a group of soldiers building a school in Afghanistan, her old Delta Force team. See this? She said. The Taliban burned that school down 3 times. and the village rebuilt it 3 times. Their leader told me something I never forgot. Real strength isn't how hard you hit. It's how many times you're willing to rebuild. Amy looked up from her sketchbook. Like a phoenix, she said. Dad told me about those birds. They rise from ashes. The room fell still. Amy's drawing took on new meaning. The motorcycles weren't just flying now. They were being reborn. Maybe that's what we need to be, Jack said softly. Not savage riders, something new. Before anyone could respond, raised voices echoed from the front. Claire stepped out, returning with a grim look. Protesters, she said. Local business owners. They think we're sheltering gang members. Storm started to stand, fire in his eyes, but Wren's voice stopped him cold. What would a phoenix do? He sat back down, thinking. It'd prove them wrong, he said slowly. Not with fists, with actions. Amy gently tore a page from her notebook and slid it across the table. The drawing showed a motorcycle rising through flames. Beneath it, she'd written, Phoenix Riders, rising to serve. Dad used to help people, she said. Taught classes, kept folks safe. What if the Savage Riders did that instead of scaring people? Storm picked up the page and stared at it like it held more answers than words ever could. It won't be easy, Wren warned. You'll have to earn the community's trust, every step, just like that school in the photo. Rebuild, rebuild, rebuild. Storm nodded, as many times as it takes. Outside, the protesters began to disperse, but something had already shifted. Inside this room, the men who once wore intimidation like armor now sat taller, with purpose in their eyes. I still remember all the safety courses, Storm said thoughtfully. Some of our guys are mechanics, really good ones. We could help other vets who need transport, Jack added. Teach repair skills, give them something to focus on. Claire, who had been quietly watching it all unfold, finally spoke. The center's been trying to start a veteran transportation program. We've just never had the people who could lead it. Until now, Wren said, meeting Storm's eyes. Amy beamed, adding the final touches to her Phoenix design. You are still a leader, Dad, she said. You just needed to start leading in the right direction. The morning light had shifted, casting long shadows across the table. Storm, who had walked in uncertain, now sat solid and steady, surrounded by fellow vets, no longer lost. Wren stood. First step, show Highland Springs you mean it. Words won't do it. Actions will. Storm rose, decision made. Jack spread the word. Clubhouse meeting tonight. If they want to be part of this, Phoenix Riders, they need to know what it means. No more threats, no more turf. We serve this community now, not control it. As the riders headed out, carrying new purpose on their shoulders, Amy stayed behind a moment. She pinned her drawing to the center's bulletin board, right beside a photo of Wren's old Delta team. Sometimes, she said quietly, the strongest thing isn't rising from the ashes, it's helping someone else rise. For 5 years, the Savage Riders Clubhouse stood on the outskirts of Highland Springs like a warning, a symbol of intimidation. But tonight, with each dusty trophy removed and every box of old memories carried out, that legacy began to change. Storm watched as his men worked under the fading light, Amy's drawings of phoenixes replacing the old emblems of conflict. Put the tools over there, he directed calmly, pointing to a wall cleared for workbenches. We need good light for the classes. Make sure those go by the windows. Inside, Jack Murphy and a handful of others were transforming what had once been a liquor-stocked bar into a welcoming reception space. Bottles disappeared. Coffee makers and water jugs took their place. The floors were scrubbed. The shadows, once heavy, were filled with purpose. Some of the guys, they're not happy, Jack said quietly, wiping sweat from his brow. 15 didn't show tonight. Storm didn't respond right away. He simply nodded, the worry behind his eyes unspoken. Those 15 were the hardcore, the ones still clinging to who they used to be, the ones who might not be ready to let go. When Wren arrived with Claire and a small group of veterans from the support center, The bikers stiffened instinctively. Old habits die hard. But Storm gave a firm nod of welcome, and that was enough. "First impressions matter," Wren said as she surveyed the space. "Tomorrow morning, 10 veterans walk through those doors for a basic motorcycle maintenance class. They need to feel safe here." "They will," Storm said with quiet certainty. Then he raised his voice. "Listen up. This space, it's not just ours anymore. From now on, it belongs to every veteran who needs it. We're not the Savage Riders. We're the Phoenix Riders now. And that name has to mean something different." Outside, the low rumble of motorcycles brought everything to a halt. Through the window, everyone saw the chrome glare of the Iron Legion pulling up, a rival gang. Leading them was Jake Morrison. He killed the engine, his hand hovering close to the edge of his vest. "Storm!" he called out. "We need to talk about the rumors going around." Storm moved toward the door, but Wren's voice stopped him. "Remember who you're choosing to be?" He nodded and walked out unarmed. Inside, the Phoenix Riders stood in silent formation, watching. "You let some waitress put you on the floor," Jake scoffed. "Now you're playing charity? What is this?" "Not charity," Storm replied calmly. "Purpose. These veterans, they're like us. They're just looking for something real to believe in." "You've gone soft," Jake growled, but the edge in his voice had cracked. "No," another voice answered. "Amy." She stepped out from behind the door, holding her sketchbook like a shield, her voice unwavering. "My dad hasn't gone soft. He's finally strong, for real." "Not fake strong." Jake stared at the 12-year-old standing alone in front of a dozen bikers. Behind her, Phoenix Riders stood ready, not with fists, but with quiet resolve. "You remember why you started riding?" Storm asked. "Because I do. You were a Marine once. You stood for something." Jake's facade twitched. "That was a lifetime ago." "It doesn't have to be," Storm said. "Tomorrow morning, we're teaching motorcycle maintenance to veterans who can't afford transport. Could use someone with Marine-level attention to detail." There was a long pause. Then, one of Jake's younger riders stepped forward. "Honestly, boss, I wouldn't mind learning. My bike's been acting up." Inside, Wren and Claire watched from the window. "This is it," Claire whispered. "The real test, not just changing themselves, but changing others." The Iron Legion left without a fight, but Jake's parting words lingered. "This isn't over, Storm. Highland Springs ain't big enough for two kinds of riders." But even as tensions loomed, the transformation continued. A scheduling board went up, listing classes, group meetings, and support programs. The new Phoenix Rider patch, a winged motorcycle wheel wrapped in rising flames, was sewn onto every vest. Claire looked up from her phone. Ruby's Diner just announced free coffee for any veteran who shows up tomorrow. "Looks like Ruby's going neutral ground. Like those old saloons and westerns," Jack said with a smile. "A place where everyone can meet without drawing a weapon." Storm gathered everyone one last time. "Tomorrow we show Highland Springs what we've become. Not everyone will believe us. Some will fight it. But every vet we help, every bike we fix, every kid we teach, that's how we prove we've changed." From across the room, Amy raised her hand. "Dad?" she asked. "Can I bring my art stuff tomorrow, while you teach the grown-ups? I want to teach their kids how to draw phoenixes." Storm blinked, caught off guard. Emotion flickered in his eyes. "Yeah, baby," he said quietly. "Yeah, that's a really good idea." Later that night, long after the last light in the clubhouse went out, Storm sat alone beneath the stars. In his hand, the old Savage Rider's patch, a snarling wolf, faded and frayed. "Having doubts?" Wren asked, stepping up beside him. "No," he said slowly. "Just thinking how much time I wasted, trying to earn respect through fear." He turned the patch in his hand. "My daughter showed more real strength in 2 days than I did in 5 years." "That's because she sees the real you," Wren replied. "Not who you became, who you've always been." Storm's phone buzzed. A message. "Jake Morrison, emergency meeting." All local bike clubs. The meaning was clear. Not everyone was ready to let the past die. Not everyone welcomed the rise of something new. Transformation wasn't optional. It was necessary. "Tomorrow's going to be interesting," Storm said. "No," Ren corrected. "It's going to be necessary. Change never comes easy. The question is, are you ready to rise above it?" Storm glanced around the reimagined clubhouse, spaces once meant for chaos now designed for healing. His daughter's phoenix drawings lined the walls. "We're ready," he said, and for the first time in years he believed it. By dawn, the Phoenix Riders were prepping for their first community class. Clean tools, fresh paint, and a dozen motorcycles waited, each representing a veteran who needed a way forward. The first visitor wasn't a vet, but an elderly woman, Mrs. Chen, holding a dusty Harley. "It was my husband's," she said. "I can't bring myself to sell it." "Vietnam vet?" Storm asked. She nodded. "Then let's keep his memory alive," Storm said, guiding her to a workbench. Veterans soon began arriving with old bikes and quiet hopes. Jack Murphy greeted each one, his demeanor transformed. Amy drew with the kids, designing patches for their parents' new identity. Outside, tension brewed. Members of rival clubs like Iron Legion arrived, led by Jake Morrison. "Here for the class?" Storm asked. Jake sneered. "Here to remind you what you're throwing away." "Not charity, purpose," Storm replied. Amy stepped forward. "My dad's not weak, he's strong, the real kind." Jake hesitated. Storm reminded him of their shared past. "You used to serve, so did I. Let's do something that matters." A younger Iron Legion rider spoke up. "My bike's been running rough, I'd like to learn." The ice cracked. Several Legion members began drifting toward the workbenches. The class resumed. Inside, Storm showed a young veteran how precision applied to both engines and service. Amy's art session had become emotional storytelling, kids drawing phoenixes rising from battle scars. One boy's drawing showed his wheelchair-bound father riding again. "We can make that happen," Storm said, then turned to Jake. "Unless you think that makes us soft." Jake looked at the art, at the people, and finally asked, "You really think this can work?" Ren offered him a coffee. "It already is." "Question is, do you want in?" At day's end, the kids had turned their drawings into a mural, hope, rebirth, and healing in crayon. Jake's own son watched Amy teach. "My dad says we might change our club's name," he said softly. "Maybe we'll rise too," Ren leaned to Claire. "This isn't just about bikes anymore." Claire nodded. "It's about showing people how to heal."